still 95,000 or is it north of there?
It's north of there now.
I thought so, yeah. Where are you?
Well, we're at or breaking through 100,000. And look, we weren't surprised, as you said, about the Business Roundtable and the CEOs committing to the stakeholder model. 3 main points on that. Number one, 5 years of polling now. We know that this is exactly what the American people want and exactly the kind of stakeholder groups that they themselves have identified. So it brings business into alignment with that. Second, we need businesses focusing on big social problems. It's the only way we're going to solve them, and that's what Just Capital was founded to do. And lastly, we think it's great for shareholders. Like, businesses that do well on these issues tend to do better in the market. And so, that we think is sort of like one of the main takeaways from what's happened.
So that's one of the key questions, I think, which is if in fact companies tend to do better if they adhere to some of these basic principles, why don't all corporations do it? I mean, corporations want to make more money, and if this is a way to make more money, then why are they irrational?
Well, it's hard to do, first of all. I mean, we're talking about companies really looking across the entire operations and saying, where can we do better? What is the business case? Where should we invest to generate both a social outcome, a better environmental outcome, but where that also helps us be better as a company over the long term? So it's not straightforward. You need, like anything, you need to examine where you are today, where you want to go, what data can help you get there. And all the companies we track, so we track about 1,000 companies, as you know, the largest 1,000 companies in the country, to see where they are on that spectrum, to try and track their progress, benchmark them, et cetera.
Well, benchmark is so important because we both know if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. That's true in business. Yep. Anything I've done in business, that's true. And one of the problems is it's not always easy to measure this, whatever this is. How could we get to a world where there are standardized ways of knowing this company does it better than that company?
So you hit the nail on the head. One of the problems with analyzing companies in these new areas is just a lack of data. So we need more disclosure. We need more transparency on what companies are actually doing. I think companies themselves would benefit from that. There's a role to play for market regulators to require companies to disclose data on things like emissions, environmental emissions, pay. But there's also a strong market incentive. One thing we know for sure is that more and more people in this country want to buy from, work for, invest in companies that lead on these issues. And so we think there's a really strong market pull for companies that are actually able to walk the talk and be best in class.
And are investors helping to drive some of this, particularly institutional investors? We just saw within the last 24 hours, BlackRock saying they want to spend more time with the companies they invest in on the question of climate change, for example.
Yeah, no doubt. There's trillions of dollars now flowing into the general area of ESG, sustainability, socially responsible investing. I think the conversations that happen between large institutional investors and the companies they hold are crucial. BlackRock obviously is a leader in that space, but many others are in that area doing the same thing. And I think companies need to connect the dots between how can we maintain this strong interest in, meeting the needs of our shareholders, but balancing that across all stakeholders. What does that even mean, and how do we do it well? And I think investors can help companies figure that out.
There were various reactions to what the Business Roundtable put out. Not all of them positive, I think it's fair to say. Yeah. Some people reacted and said it's not going far enough. In fact, you had some people like Ben & Jerry's and Patagonia and that thing saying you should just be B corporations, so-called B corporations, which, as I understand, is a different certificate of incorporation some states allow to really endorse sort of paying attention to all the stakeholders. What do you make of that?
Well, we think it's a really important part of the overall picture here. I mean, if companies want to go down that route, it's available to them. It's a great organization. Whether that works for large publicly traded companies, that's a big change. And I think one thing that we see is that it's fine to be able to say, okay, companies, now you've said this, what are you actually doing? That's where Just Capital plays a strong role, we think, because we've been tracking these companies on those issues for the better part of 5 years. So, look, there's always going to be people who think it doesn't go far enough. There'll be plenty of people who think it goes way too far as well. And I think that reflects the reality of running a modern-day corporation in America today, is balancing those competing interests.
You not only measure these things for this 1,000 corporations, you also, with Goldman, as I understand it, have put together an ETF, actually, to trade based on that. How long has that been in existence, and how is it doing?
It's been in existence just over a year. It's outperformed its benchmark. It is comprised of the top 50% of companies in every sector. And, you know, look, it's these issues tend to be playing the long game. Like we're saying that these companies we think will do better over the long term. We're really excited about the product. We're excited about other products that we're bringing to market. And I think as more and more investors signal they want to be supporting this and investing in these companies, it has a role to play within a diversified portfolio.
How do you measure your success at Just Capital? When will you know you are winning or have won? Have won is probably asking too much.
I think when we start to see real outcomes where the private sector is really lifting people out of poverty, helping invest in communities that need it in this country, creating good jobs, providing a future for more Americans that is better than it is today, and that breathes life back into the American dream. I mean, that's really how we judge our success. We're a nonprofit, as you know. This is all about trying to use markets to solve big social, economic, health, environmental challenges. So measuring progress on the outcomes of that work is crucial to what we do.
What's critical mass for you?
In terms of?
The number of companies. There should be a tipping point where all of a sudden everybody's doing it, as opposed to just getting it started. How far do you have to get before you get to the point where you say, okay, now it's going to take care of itself?
It's early days. I would say, we track 1,000 companies. Every business in America, large and small, private and public, every company around the world should be thinking along these lines. So I prefer to think of it as a journey, not a destination. Provided we're tracking steady progress in the outcomes, the stakeholders that business is there to serve, I think the journey will be a rewarding one.